Hey everyone, welcome to That's Not Proper, and I'm your host, Corey Asuncion. Hey everyone, thank you for joining me today on That's Not Proper, episode 6, Let's Create Rebels with Intent. Today I'm going to be discussing the idea of creating rebels in our children, in our society, in our environment, and even within ourselves. When I first was considering this specific topic for this podcast, creating rebels with intent, I was initially thinking solely of children and children, from a young age, right out of the womb kind of a thing. Be thinking of creating rebels right out of the gate. And the reason I was thinking about that was because my older children, I have 7 children. My oldest daughter is 28, and then I have a 22-year-old, a 21-year-old, a 19-year-old, an almost 18-year-old, a 15-year-old, and a 12-year-old. I think that was 7. At any rate, I was thinking about the older 4, especially, a little bit the 5th one, but mostly the older 4, because they experienced our parenting and our traditions and our norms for how we did things in our house at an earlier time. During a time where I had a different understanding, a confused understanding, and I didn't have the knowledge and experience and whatnot that I do now. Now, I don't know everything, obviously, but there are many things that I think if I had to go back, I don't necessarily want to go back, but if I had to go back, there are a lot of things I would do different. And one of those things would be to encourage children that rebel against norms and traditions, that ask questions about absolutely everything. But then as I was considering that, I thought, here I am, 46 years old, and it wasn't until maybe 7 years ago, if that I started rebelling against traditions and norms and cultural and society, things that we're told to do and how they have to be. And so then I thought, we need to create rebels within ourselves. We need to create rebels within our society. We need to create, in essence, a revolution of how we do things. There's that quote that's frequently attributed to Albert Einstein that says, insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. And essentially, I feel like that can be applied to how we raise our kids, how we live our lives, traditions and norms. If we're repeating these same things, these same traditions, these same norms, these same society script, in a sense, that we've been told we have to live out, and we're crying out for change, things have got to be different, but we're doing the same exact things over and over and over again and demanding some different type of result, it actually makes no sense. So in essence, it's the definition of insanity according to supposedly, possibly Albert Einstein. A couple of my older children that are still at home, I actually have 6 still at home. My oldest is out of the house. I have 3 grandsons. 4th grandson is on the way. But a couple of my older ones are still at home and they have jobs and whatnot. And some of us have differing opinions on how things should be done or belief systems or whatever. And at times it's very frustrating. And part of that has to do with, it's just irritating. We may not necessarily argue, but in disagreements, or there are times where I'm like, oh my gosh, why does this one say that kind of stuff or behave that way? And why do they think this way? And it makes me crazy. But I was sitting down the other night and I was discussing with my partner the fact that I almost have to be proud of that. And the reason why I'm proud of that is despite the errors that I believe I made early on, we made an agreement early on or a decision or said to one another early on, we want to create individuals that are different, that aren't like everyone else, that serve a purpose. We're not going to just have children be children for forever, And so the thing is, when I have some of my children that do things very opposite of what I would like them to do, or whatever vision I had for them, or when they question me and things like that, and I get frustrated. I had to pause for a moment and kind of take some pride in that, because it's exactly what I wanted. I wanted children that questioned everything, because I want them to figure it out. I want them to understand. I want them to consider. I want them to dig deep to make sure that what they're hearing and what they're doing and what they're understanding is truth. And if that means that at times they've got to question me, I'm okay with that, even when it's irritating. For myself growing up, I did question. In fact, my parents have said to me at times how irritating I was, but I didn't question in the way I really, really wanted to. And a lot of times my attitude, I think, appeared to come off as rebellious, but really the type of personality I am, if I don't get it, if there's not some clarity in there for me, I'm going to question. And it's not a rebellious type of questioning. I want complete clarity, complete understanding. And if I find something in there that seems like it's misconstrued, or, hey, wait a second, that's different than what you're doing or than what you said before, I'm going to find it. And so growing up, I did that a little bit, but nowhere near as much as I really felt like I wanted to, or as much as I felt like was allowed. And I wanted to be able to have children that would one day become adults that questioned absolutely everything without just following the crowd, without just doing what everybody says to do. And that's what I mean with regards to creating rebels with intent, so that they fight back against what society says is the quote unquote norm. Because if we go ahead and take a look at our society right now, and if we're going to say that this is the norm, oh, well, that's terrible. That's terrifying. If the norm is, according to society, that I cannot question, other adults, that I cannot question other people, that I cannot question authority, that I cannot question the government, that I cannot question the church or whatever religious group that you belong to, if I cannot question the fact that racism is an issue, if I cannot question the fact that people don't get that they have white privilege, then there's a problem. Because these are huge issues in society, and there are still people out there that truly believe they are not. And I want my children and my grandchildren to question that and to fight back against it and not perpetuate it as they go forward. And some of that has to be done with regards to the traditions and the rituals and the norms that we've created in our society. Things like telling boys they can't wear pink, that they can't have emotions, that they can't love flowers, that they can't express romantic love, things like that. I have a son who absolutely loves pastel colors and things like that. And initially, I kind of was like, oh no, because it wasn't the norm. It wasn't traditional. It wasn't how things were done. I had got some questions from other friends and family, like, why is he wearing so much pink and lavender and blue, and why does he have flowers that he's got like appliques on sweatshirts and things like that he specifically purchased to put onto these sweatshirts, and why does he have pink Vans and things like that? And initially, my initial feeling was it's like I went back 20 years, and I thought, oh gosh, you know what, that's right, that's a thing that, men aren't supposed to have, that, because I don't even know where in society someone decided guys can't like colors that are pink. But anyhow, and immediately I stopped myself, and I went out and I bought that boy every pink and lavender and purple thing I could find. I went and bought him these more pink shoes. I buy him appliques for his sweatshirts. He likes to keep his hair a little bit longer. I'm totally okay with that, because that child is rebelling against the norm. And I love it. I'm realizing my P's are coming off really excessively loud, so please forgive me for that. I will pull back from the microphone when I make a p sound. I'm just going to attribute it to passion, or I have really crazy plosives when I speak. At any rate, it's not just about boys versus girls. It's about questioning absolutely everything. I had shared an article Actually, it's kind of like an article blurb and a video. And it was real basic, real short with regards to the idea of allowing our children at a very young age to question. And the example that they had shared was that her son had requested the dye that they used to put on Easter eggs. He wanted to put it in his cereal. And initially the parents were like, why? No, that's ridiculous. That's not how things are done. And then they, for a moment, discussed it and thought, wait, but why not? Because their child at the age of 4 said, why? Why can't I make my milk pink? And there really was no reason to not. In addition to that, what it opens up is a communication, an understanding. It opens up creativity. It causes a child to think more for themselves instead of being dictated to, doing everything that they have been told to do, that everybody says is the quote unquote right way to do things. Even in considering that, what I was thinking about was the idea of people who have done revolutionary things in our society in the past. I don't feel like we hear as much about it now, or maybe, I don't know, we'll hear about it 50 years from now. So when I'm gone, my grandchildren will be hearing about it. But think about things that were done years ago by someone who rebelled against what society said was tradition and norm. People like Harriet Tubman, Joan of Arc, William Wallace, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Nelson Mandela, heck, even Bob Marley. I don't think we've necessarily forgotten that these people existed and that we don't necessarily not hear about them. But what I don't necessarily hear is, hey, these were rebels. These were rebels against society. I mean, yeah, okay, you can hear Bob Marley's song, Soul Rebel. And there was a lot within his music that talked about rebellion. But I don't know if we discuss it at the level like, hey, that's something we should all be doing. Rebelling against what is wrong. Rebelling against, traditions and norms that dictate our life to us when it's obvious that this is not how things are supposed to be done or should be done. That we're repeating these things over and over, calling out for change, but we have the exact same results. I mean, it's borderline a duh for me. Like, duh, why didn't I think about that? I'm not a real big conspiracy theorist, but the words rebellion, rebellious, rebel, it's as if someone took those words and then construed them in a way so that we would look at them and think, oh no, bad, and it's negative, and oh, that's a troublemaker. And when in actuality, an effective rebellion, an effective rebel, someone who is being effectively rebellious is bringing out great change that's for the greater good. In addition to that, it can be done in a way that you are firmly planted, that you stand your ground, that you oppose that which is wrong, but still being able to do it in a way that is kind and empathetic and is compassionate. And please do not misunderstand me. Sometimes kindness and compassion and empathy will not look like kindness and compassion and empathy to someone who is in the wrong. You will be accused of being judgmental, or you'll be accused of starting an issue. Ignore that stuff. There are many simple things that are done regularly in our society that we just accept because, like I said, tradition and norms. And some of them are interesting to me. For example, clothing style. Why mock someone because of the way that they dress? I don't think I completely understand why someone would choose to do that. It doesn't affect you. They're not asking you to wear the clothes. I mean, if they are, then you can oppose that. But I'm saying they're not asking you to dress like that. This is their own personal attire that they've purchased or whatever. Why in the world is that an issue for you? That really, to me, means you have an issue within yourself, within your own insecurities. In addition to that, the way someone chooses to speak, their mannerisms, their employment status, their financial status, the number of children they do or do not have, their gender choice, their marital status. I would really love to know how that actually affects somebody else if it's not yourself. Again, if someone is forcing you to dress like them, forcing you to speak like them, things like that, obviously, that's impeding your own personal freedom, and you can reject those things. But for the most part, why do people feel as though someone who has done something different than them, gone against tradition, gone against norm, is a rebel in these areas specifically? What about that is actually truly bad? One huge topic that has been on, the forefront of really everything is gender. And it's interesting to me because initially, when I was coming to an understanding with regards to this, there's some things going on with our family. And my initial thought was, well, that's different. And, again, that was because of the traditions and norms, especially relating to my generation. It was opposing that. And it really only took like 3 seconds for me to get over that. I mean, I needed to understand and to educate myself a little bit more. But the reason why it took 3 seconds is because of love. I love this person. But what was funny was real quick for me was, I don't understand why anyone would want to tell another human being, no, you cannot live the life you want to live. No, you cannot have the freedom to be who you are, who is comfortable to you, who brings you joy. I do not understand why someone would want to prevent that. I don't understand why they feel as though it's their place to tell another person, I'm going to restrict you in this way. I'm going to hurt you, by the way, in this way, because it makes me feel better, because my traditions and norms should be your traditions and norms. No. And so when I look at this current issue of gender, I appreciate it because, again, it is a rebellion against tradition. It is a rebellion against norms. And I wholly support the rebellion of it. I was thinking about my son, who I had mentioned earlier, who has chosen to go against the norm and express himself in his attire. And he 100% gets that, I think, from his father. This guy, my partner, he has always been the exact opposite of the norm. The way he speaks, the way he thinks, the way he talks, and the way he dresses, especially within the last, 7 to 10 years. He has, as a statement of sorts, chosen to be very different in his attire. And initially it was odd for me because I was like, this is different. In all honesty, it's really not that crazy, but it does stand out. And when I started seeing the looks on people's faces, hearing the comments being made, especially from friends and family, I was hurt. I don't know if everybody else is like this, but I tend to have an extreme loyalty, especially when it comes to my kids and my partner. And if I feel like you have done or said something that could hurt them, like emotionally or mentally, not just physically, but things that are deep inside that people don't like to discuss necessarily, it riles me up. And so when I started hearing and seeing these things, comments were being made to me. Comments are still on a regular basis made to him, and it hurts me. And so I have made my efforts then to make sure that I am doing things like seeking out the clothing that he likes, cutting off the arms of his shirts because that's how he likes to wear them. He likes to wear his pants short because he doesn't like the bottom of his pants to touch his boots because he wears really high boots. So give me those pants and I'm going to hem them up to a 28-inch length, despite the fact that you should probably be wearing a 32 according to everybody else. And that is his act of rebellion in a sense, and I support it. What's crazy to me, though, is to see people that don't know you, for one, but also people that know you and love you, and you have supported and loved and really, truly never treated in a harmful way ever, hurt you in that way. It blows my mind. And the reason why I say it hurts me is because I know that if it was me hearing those things about myself, if someone was mocking my attire or my hair or my makeup or making fun of the way that I felt comfortable looking, it would be hurtful. I would be sad. And so my response, because I adore this person, is it's like I'm taking it on, whether or not he wants me to, because usually he tells me, it's all right, no big deal, I don't care, I'm used to it. But still, to me, it's painful. And so that's where I say, it hurts me. I mean, I'm talking about a guy who would do anything for literally anyone. I'm regularly telling him things like, no, don't do that. Why would you do that? And he is insistent about seeking out people to help. Now, this podcast isn't about him, but it's just an example of the things that I see and these little acts of rebellion that I think can bring about great change for everyone. And, the other thing it makes me consider is different things that we can do within our own homes and our societies, our groups, communities, friends, whatever, that can bring about change. And when you start something, what's that? I don't even know how that saying goes. Maybe it's a song, but just a little spark. Oh God, I just remembered it's a Christian song. Okay, just a little spark gets a fire going. The thing is one tiny little thing can get a fire going. And so if you do something as simple as encourage creativity in your children. My daughter, when she was little, she was like 3 years old, and it was warm out, so weather permitting, this was okay. She wanted to wear a bathing suit and cowboy boots, and they were little cowboy boots that had the tassels on the back. She looked utterly ridiculous. And I started out, it was, no, Lex, you're not going to wear that. We're going to go ahead and put on some regular human people clothes. And she was way disgusted by me not allowing her to do this. And so I gave in. I'm like, fine, let's go. And we went to the grocery store. And I actually got comments at the grocery store like, why is she dressed like that? How could you bring your child out, I don't know, into the world in a bathing suit and cowboy boots? It was warm, by the way. And we were in an area, it was very warm. It was probably, 80 degrees outside. So it wasn't like she was going to be cold. Little things like that, encourage ownership of their minds and their bodies. Let them know that emotions are valid and useful for communication. Teach them as well to not let the emotions take control of absolutely everything. But emotions are useful and they are valid. And when they're sad, they can be sad. And when they want to cry, they can cry. Remind them then to dust themselves off and move on. But that their emotions are valid. That it's okay to say no in situations where they are not comfortable. That kids don't have to hug and kiss every person. That's a big one. My oldest grandson, is not really a big fan of hugging and kissing anybody, except for maybe his parents. And I have been real big on making sure, or at least I've tried to be, hey, he does not have to kiss me. He does not have to hug me. I'm just going to tell him I love him. And I encourage parents to do that. It's really important that he knows that is his body and he gets to choose what is done with it. It does not need to be dictated to him by traditions and norms. Recently, I had asked a question on Facebook and I had asked if anyone had broken any norms or traditions that they had maybe grown up with or whatever. And someone replied, and what she had told me was that they had stopped spanking and disciplining her children. And I asked her in a private message to, kind of expound on that. And one thing that she said that really stuck out with me and I was greatly encouraged by was that she said one thing that she noticed was that there was a mutual trust and respect between her children, herself, and her husband. And I was really, really encouraged by that. The reason why I was encouraged by it was because this act of rebellion against traditions and norms was a pretty big deal for someone like her. She was raised in the church, and in fact, we had gone to the same church for a period of time. And I just know that within that community, discipline and spanking is kind of a cornerstone of raising children. So to break that norm and tradition is a huge, huge deal. And I was really, really encouraged that she took such a major step in the raising of her children, and to see that the fruit of that was trust and respect, which really is priceless when you're talking about your relationship with your children. I'm not certain if I've romanticized the idea of unity in the world by having an unrealistic hope. I'm hopeful that it's not unrealistic, but thinking that acts of rebellion, to rebel, to create little rebels by allowing people and children to think creatively, to recognize that their mind and their body is their own, that their choices for their life is their own, the freedom to be who they want to be, to act the way they want to act, dress the way they want to dress, raise the children the way they want to raise their children without it being dictated to them by traditions and norms that have been passed down or obviously not working. Man, I can't see how that couldn't bring anything but unity and prosperity and trust and respect and understanding. Thank you for listening in today on That's Not Proper. Please share and subscribe and follow That's Not Proper on whichever podcast platform you are using. Go ahead and take a look at my Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter page, That's Not Proper, and like, share, and follow there. I'd love to hear comments from anyone. I also have an email, that'snotpropercorey@gmail.com. Please feel free to email me any questions, concerns, ideas that you'd like to hear me talk about. And please tune in for next week's episode of That's Not Proper.